TV1 රැස්වීදෙන ජීවිතේ
බොරළු ඇනෙන පය රිදවන වෙහෙස මඳක් නිවාගන්න ගම්මැද්දේ වතුර බොන්න අපේ ගමට ඔබත් ඉන්න
රජරට අස්වද්දන ගොවි ජනතාවටත් ගම්මැද්දෙන් පිරිසිදු පානීය ජලය අනුරාධපුර කැබිතිගොල්ලෑව මහා කටුවර ගාලබැව ගම්මානයේ පවසනි වූ ගම්මැද්ද ජනතාව සමග ඉදිරියටම
At 30 minutes past 12, this is lunchtime news. I'm Hassan Shazali, coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Let's start off with a look at your headlines this afternoon.
Queues continue to grow for fuel. Sri Lanka unloads new diesel consignment. Fishermen protest demanding fuel. 7.5 power cuts today as well. Unannounced power cuts in some areas. Strike by healthcare workers enters second day. Sri Lanka abstains from voting on resolution against Russian invasion.
Now, Sri Lankan fishermen are currently protesting at the Telpatha junction. They are obstructing vehicle movement along the Chilaw-Colombo main road. Fishermen are protesting against the recent fuel hike as well as the increase in prices of fishing gear. We had our Newsfirst correspondents visit the location. They said that vehicle movement along the Negombo-Colombo main road has also been affected due to the protest. It's a story that has been making headlines over the last few days. The shortage of fuel has affected many sectors, including tourism, transport, agriculture and even fishing. Long queues for fuel have been seen in several areas at fuel stations across the country in the last few days.
People had been standing in queues at the IOC filling station in Haliala since last night. However, the fuel station had run out of diesel. A bowser carrying fuel arrived at the fuel station a few hours ago. This was the situation at a fuel station in Hinguragoda in Polonnaruwa last night. The filling station had only sold a limited amount of fuel. As a result, farmers who arrived to purchase diesel were severely inconvenienced.
මේක ඉතින් කවුරුත් දුන්න පරිප්පුවක් නෙවෙයි මේක ඉතින් අපිම ඉල්ලන් කාපු පරිප්පුවක් මේක ඉතින් තව කාලයක් අපිට කණ්ඩ වෙනවා
ඔය ජනාධිපතිතුමාට කියන්න මේ ගොයන් කපන මැෂින් වලට දැන් අස්සන්න අස් කරගන්න ගොයන් කපන මැෂින් වලට තෙල් නිකුත් කරන්න කියලා ඔය කාටවත් ඕවා තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ ගෝඨාභය මහත්තයාගේ සෞභාග්‍ය දෝරේ ගලනවා අපි ඉන්නවා පොලිමේ අපේ ජනාධිපතිට ජය වේවා අපි පොලිමේ ජනාධිපතිට ජය වේවා.
People had gathered at a fuel station in Mathura since last night. This was the situation at the Dematagoda filling station this morning. People had gathered there since last night to purchase fuel. A long queue was seen at the fuel station in Nugegoda to purchase petrol. This was a situation at a filling station in Anuradhapura. A long queue was seen for fuel at a filling station in Valigama, Mathara.
Right, now the fuel shortage has affected many parts of Sri Lanka, especially in urban areas, including Colombo as well. We've got News First, Naviksha Gunasekara joining us from a fuel station in Colombo. Naviksha, what is the situation at the moment at the fuel station in which you are in at the moment?
Right now I'm here at a petrol station in Flower Road in Colombo, and as you can see, there is no diesel available at this filling station. When News First inquired with the staff from this filling station, they stated that the stocks of diesel had finished since last evening. And what you can see now is the queue of people who are here to obtain petrol. A short while ago, there were 2 buses that arrived at this petrol station. However, the staff told News First that the buses were carrying petrol of octane 95. Now this queue was seen just exactly the same way last evening as well when we toured around Colombo to report to you on the latest of the situation. This queue was exactly this way last evening from 7 p.m. till at least midnight. Now this is usually the time that the general public would enjoy their lunch breaks, but as of today, and their break at a petrol station on waiting to get some petrol in a petrol queue. For the News First team, I'm Naviksha Gunasekara reporting to you from Flower Road.
That was Naviksha Gunasekara joining us from a fuel station in Colombo to provide us the latest situation. We also have News First Ahmed Buso, who is joining us. He in fact toured Colombo 2 this morning to witness the situation regarding the fuel crisis in the country.
Right now I'm here at the filling station here in Slave Island, where you can see a very long queue of vehicles here to fuel up their tanks. And not just these vehicles, on this side of the petrol station we can also see people lined up in queues with cans and barrels to fuel up their cans so that they do not have to stay in these very long Now I'm walking up to the end of the very long queue that I just showed you a short while ago, and if I'm not mistaken, this queue would at least be of 3 kilometers long, and people here have been here since last night to fuel up their tanks. So this is the current situation here in Slave Island in Colombo, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the very situation in almost 90% of the filling stations in Sri Lanka. Ahmed Buso, News First, Colombo.
Thank you very much, Buso, for that update on the fuel situation here in Colombo 2. Now, Sri Lankans have been compelled to wait in line for hours at filling stations, even if fuel delivery is subject to restrictions. Yesterday, authorities said that fuel shipments will arrive in the country this week. The Energy Ministry also said that diesel is currently being unloaded from one of the shipments that arrived at the Colombo port.
The Energy Ministry said that a shipment of diesel that arrived in Sri Lanka is being unloaded. Spokesperson and Additional Secretary to the Ministry, Chaminda Hettiarachchi, said with this shipment, the shortage of diesel in Sri Lanka will be addressed to a certain extent. The shipment included 37,300 metric tons of diesel. Chaminda Hettiarachchi said another ship carrying 28,300 metric tons of diesel will reach the Sri Lankan shores tomorrow. The shipment will also include 9,000 metric tons of jet fuel. Another ship carrying diesel is also scheduled to arrive in the country on the 6th of March.
Right, now arising from this fuel shortage is the power cuts that has affected people over the last few days. People in fact have been left in the dark for the last couple of weeks as a result of the fuel shortage in the country. It's coming as power plants are running out of fuel to generate electricity. Now authorities say that power cuts for 7.5 hours will be imposed today as well. although several entities said that the power cuts will end on Saturday. The Public Utilities Commission has granted approval to disrupt the supply of electricity for 7.5 hours today. According to the Ceylon Electricity Board, 5-hour power cuts will be imposed in several areas between 8 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. and then we will have 2.5 hours of power cuts that will be imposed from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. In the meantime, people in several areas are complaining that they are facing power cuts of more than 10 hours yesterday. The Ceylon Electricity Board had said that the power cuts would only last 7.5 hours.
A power cut was imposed last afternoon in several areas of the Anuradhapura district. The power was restored after 7 hours. Residents say they had to face another power cut from 7:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. as well. People in rural Sri Lanka depend on electricity not just for their activities but to activate electric fences against wild elephants that encroach into villages. The power cuts have affected the lives of many, including factory workers in the country.
Wild elephants had encroached into a village in Kantale and destroyed sugarcane cultivations as the electric fence had not been active due to the power cuts. Farmers in Kantale say 5 acres of cultivations were destroyed by wild elephants last night. The elephants had also destroyed other crops including manioc and bananas.
We have 2 filling stations at Gulin Bidhanwara. The farmers are able to purchase fuel worth only 2,000 or 2,500 rupees. Even to purchase that, they have to come at night. When the farmers are given limited fuel stocks, they can only cultivate parts of their farmlands. Farmers have fallen from the frying pan into the fire. There are no authorities to listen to their woes. Please implement a plan to supply fuel to the farmers. Farmers of Medawachi are currently facing several issues, including the poor harvest due to the fertilizer crisis in the country. Today, they are unable to reap their harvest due to the fuel crisis.
In rest of the day's stories, the strike launched by 17 trade unions from the health sector is in its second day today. This has left several patients helpless at state-run hospitals across the country.
Apart from the Government Nurses Association, which has been issued an injunction order by the court, health workers from 17 other trade unions in the health service are engaged in the strike. They refrain from services including issuing medicines, conducting laboratory tests and treating patients at wards. Public health inspectors and midwives were among those who stepped away from their daily duties.
අමදාම ස්ට්‍රයික් කර කර ඉන්න මිනිසුන් ගැන අනුකම්පා කරන්න ඕනේ ටික. දැන් මේ මොකද මේ කරන්නේ වීලුව මිනිසුන් රෝගීන් ටික අමාරු දැන එක වැඩි කරන්නේ. රුපියල් 1000 දෙන්නවා ත්‍රිවිල් එකට. අද ආවා. හෙට ආවා. කොහෙන්ද අපිට සල්ලි? අමදාම ස්ට්‍රයික්. දැන් මේවට කවුද වක් කියන්නේ? සෑහෙන කනගාටුයි මේ අපේ ආණ්ඩුව ගැන නම්. අපි ආණ්ඩුවට පක්ෂපාතීව වැඩ කරනවා. නමුත් වැඩක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒනවාට එහෙම කරාට. හැමතැනම මේ විදිහ තමයි. ෆාමසි එකෙන් තමයි ගන්න වෙන්නේ බෙහෙත්. ඒ ගන්නත් ඉතින් සල්ලි නැහැ.
A maximum retail price of 2 rupees and 30 cents has been imposed on a 500 milligram paracetamol tablet from the 28th of February. The gazette issued in this regard says that the maximum retail price will be applicable to all brands of paracetamol tablets. Right now, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund, it has determined that Sri Lanka's economic future looks grim. The IMF says Sri Lanka's public debt has risen to unsustainable levels. This is coupled with low international reserves and persistently large financing needs in the coming years.
In a media release issued today, the IMF Executive Board noted that it concluded the Article 4 consultation with Sri Lanka on the 25th of February this year. The IMF Executive Board stressed the urgency of implementing a credible and coherent strategy to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability while protecting vulnerable groups and reducing poverty through strengthened, well-targeted social safety nets. The IMF said that on the eve of the pandemic, the country was highly vulnerable to external shocks owing to inadequate external buffers and high risks to public debt sustainability, exacerbated by the Easter Sunday terrorist attacks in 2019 and major policy changes, including large tax cuts at late 2019. Directors encouraged continued improvements to expenditure rationalization, budget formulation and execution, and the fiscal rule. They also encouraged the authorities to reform state-owned enterprises and adopt cost recovery recovery energy pricing. They also called for a prudent management of the Colombo Port City project and continued efforts to strengthen governance and fight corruption.
The Sri Lanka Vanitha Vimana Summit 2022 is being held at the BMICH in Colombo. It's in line with the Sri Lanka Vanitha Vimana Award ceremony that is to be held on the 8th of March. The summit is attended by a large number of female experts from various fields. We now have Newsfirst Azra Azan joining us with the latest.
Sri Lanka Vanitha Vimana Summit 2021 got underway at the BMICH in Colombo today. 6 eminent panelists joined the discussion to speak about various issues faced by the women in Sri Lanka. Now, these were the issues that we identified and captured during our Vanitha Vimana initiative that was launched across 9 provinces. And the specialty of today's event is that women representing all walks of life and representing multiple industries joined the discussion today and shared their views and ideas as well. Now, the findings and the discussion points that emerge from the summit today will be compiled into a report and will be handing this over to the United Nations and to the government of Sri Lanka on the 8th of March 2022 at the Vanitha Vimana final grand ceremony to mark the International Women's Day. Azra.
Right now, let's take a look at a story that has been making headlines globally and in Sri Lanka as well. Sri Lanka has abstained from backing a resolution at the United Nations in support of Ukraine. Sri Lanka, together with India, were among the 34 countries that abstained from voting in support of the resolution against Russia.
We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of draft resolution ES-11/L1, please signify. Those against, abstentions.
The UN General Assembly voted to demand that Russia stop its offensive in Ukraine and withdraw all troops. A total of 141 UN member states voted for the resolution, while 5 countries voted against it and 34 abstained. Sri Lanka, together with India, were among the 34 countries that abstained from supporting the resolution against Russia. While General Assembly resolutions are non-binding, they carry political weight, with Wednesday's vote representing a symbolic victory for Ukraine and increasing Moscow's international isolation. Even Russia's traditional ally Serbia voted against it. The text of the resolution deplores Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The last time the Security Council convened an emergency session of the General Assembly was in 1982. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the General Assembly's message was loud and clear.
The result of the vote is as follows.
An investigation into possible war crimes in Ukraine has been launched after Russia was accused of bombing civilians. Russia's UN envoy, Nebenzia, denied Moscow was targeting civilians and accused Western governments of pressuring assembly members to pass the resolution, whose adoption, he said, could fuel further violence. Cities including the capital Kiev, Kharkiv and Kherson have come under heavy shelling in recent days. Foreign media reported that Russian military strikes hit 3 schools and a cathedral in the northeastern town of Kharkiv, adding that several shops near the city council building were also damaged. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky gave an upbeat assessment of the war in a video statement released today and called on Ukrainians to keep up their resistance. In the statement, Zelensky claimed 9,000 Russians have been killed over the last 7 days since the invasion.
Our army is doing everything to fully break the enemy. Nearly 9,000 Russians have been killed in a week. The occupiers are forced to use tens of helicopters to pick up their killed and wounded, who are 19 and 20-year-olds. What have they seen in their lives other than this invasion? But the majority of them are left all over the place. Ukraine doesn't want to be covered by the dead bodies of soldiers. Go home with your whole army. Tell your officers that you want to live, that you don't want to die, but to live. We need to stop the war and restore peace as soon as possible.
Ми народ, який за тиждень зламав плани ворога.
Meanwhile, the United States has accused Russia of launching a full war on media freedom and the truth by blocking independent news outlets and preventing Russians from hearing news of the invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. State Department said in a statement, quote-unquote, Russia's government is also throttling Twitter, Facebook and Instagram platforms that tens of millions of Russian citizens rely on to access independent information and opinions. It added Russians also used social media to connect to each other and the outside world.
Right now, News First will of course keep you updated with the latest stories, especially coming in from Russia and Ukraine on our primetime news bulletin at 9 tonight. You're up to date with the latest stories here on News First. I'm Hassan Shazali. I'll join you again at 1:55 with more latest stories. Bye for now.